Millions of people are working harder than ever before, yet somehow feeling more financially trapped every single year. And no, it's not because you're lazy, and somehow, even after doing everything right, they're still falling behind. People are taking extra shifts, working overtime, driving for Uber after work, cutting unnecessary spending, trying to stay responsible, and still feeling like they are barely keeping their head above water. And that creates a strange feeling most people cannot fully explain. Because you are exhausted, but not progressing. You're busy all the time, but your financial life still feels unstable. And slowly, that pressure starts changing you mentally. But here's the scary part. Most people still think this is happening because they are not working hard enough. When in reality, the system around work quietly changed years ago, and almost nobody noticed it happening in real time. A few decades ago, working harder usually created visible progress. A stable full-time job could support a family, cover a home, build savings, and create long-term stability without destroying your mental health in the process. Today, that same effort often only maintains survival. That is the shift people are struggling to process emotionally. Because modern life became expensive in a completely different way. Rent quietly increased, groceries slowly became painful, healthcare costs became heavier, insurance, subscriptions, fuel, debt payments, and everyday bills slowly stacked together until even normal life started feeling financially exhausting. And none of these things feel extreme individually. That is what makes this pressure so dangerous. It is constant, invisible, and emotionally draining over time. You wake up early, rush through traffic, spend all day working, come home mentally exhausted, and still feel anxious every time you check your bank account. Not because you are irresponsible, because the gap between effort and stability quietly changed. And this is where most people become trapped psychologically. They believe the answer is simply to work harder. So they push themselves more. Longer hours, more overtime, less sleep, more stress, more sacrifice. But the financial pressure still follows them everywhere. And eventually, exhaustion starts feeling normal. But here's where it gets worse. Because what changed is bigger than salaries alone. The entire relationship between work and financial security quietly shifted underneath people without them fully realizing it. Modern life no longer rewards effort the same way it once did. That sounds uncomfortable to hear, but you can already feel it happening around you. People with decent jobs feel financially stressed. Couples with two incomes still struggle to save consistently. Young adults delay moving out. Parents feel constant financial anxiety even while working full-time. And despite all this effort, stability still feels fragile. That is why so many people secretly feel confused, because they followed the rules they were taught. Work hard, stay responsible, be disciplined, save money, stay patient. But now even disciplined people feel financially behind. And that creates emotional burnout most people never talk about openly. Because when hard work stops creating visible progress, people slowly stop feeling hopeful. Now pay attention, because this is where the real shift begins. The biggest misunderstanding today is that people think movement automatically means progress. But being constantly busy is not always the same thing as moving forward financially. That realization changes everything. A person can work 12 hours a day and still remain financially fragile if their entire life depends on one paycheck that barely keeps up with rising costs. And millions of people are now living exactly like that. One unexpected medical bill, one rent increase, one emergency expense, and suddenly everything becomes unstable again. That constant pressure slowly changes how people think, sleep, and live. And most people never stop long enough to realize the system itself changed around them. Before we continue, understand something important. Most people stay financially exhausted not because they are lazy, but because nobody ever explained why modern life suddenly feels so heavy despite all their effort. If this is connecting with you, subscribe to Us Finance Insight. Because this channel is not about fake motivation or unrealistic financial fantasies. It is about understanding the real shifts quietly happening around your money, your work, and your future before most people fully realize them. Now here is where things become even more important. Because the people adapting best today are not always the people working the hardest. They're usually the people who understand leverage earlier. That word sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. Leverage means your effort creates results beyond the hours you directly work, and modern systems increasingly reward that more than endless physical effort alone. That is why some people feel permanently exhausted, while others slowly create more flexibility, even without working themselves into burnout every day. This does not mean hard work became useless. It means hard work alone is no longer enough by itself. That is the uncomfortable truth millions of people are beginning to feel emotionally, even if they cannot fully explain it yet. And this is exactly why burnout became so common. Because people are trying to solve a modern financial problem using an older survival formula. Work more, push harder, sacrifice more. But eventually the human mind and body start resisting constant pressure without meaningful progress. And when people stay trapped in survival mode too long, They stop thinking long-term completely. They stop building, stop adapting, stop learning, stop planning. They simply focus on getting through the next month. That is where financial exhaustion becomes dangerous, because survival mode slowly steals future thinking from people without them noticing. Now, this does not mean everyone should suddenly quit their job or chase unrealistic internet money fantasies. That is not the point. The real shift is awareness. Financially aware people are starting to realize that depending completely on one system, one paycheck, and one path has become riskier than ever before. So instead of only asking, how can I work harder? They start asking, how can I create more flexibility? How can I reduce dependency? How can I build skills that stay valuable? How can I stop surviving month to month forever? That shift in thinking matters more than most people realize. Now, let us make this practical and realistic. First, stop measuring your financial life only by how busy you are. Effort without direction can quietly trap people for years. Second, start paying attention to what actually creates long-term stability instead of temporary survival. Because surviving every month is not the same thing as building a stable future. And third, protect your energy carefully. Exhausted people stop adapting, and people who stop adapting slowly fall behind in changing systems. These are small mindset shifts, but they completely change how you see work, money, and progress. And most people will not fully understand this shift until much later. That is the real danger, because the longer someone stays trapped in survival mode, the harder it becomes to step back and see what is actually happening around them. And unfortunately, this pressure is not slowing down, it is accelerating. More people are working longer hours while feeling less secure emotionally. That feeling is not random. It is a signal that the system itself changed. If you're starting to realize that working harder is no longer enough, then you're already ahead of most people. The people who understand this early are the ones who don't stay trapped later. So if you don't want to keep running harder just to stay in the same place, subscribe now to Us Finance Insight, because in the next video, we're going to break down why most people today are becoming financially exhausted, even while working full-time. And by the time most people realize it, they're already burned out, stuck, and years behind.